But here's some of the movies that were in 1988. Beetlejuice, Die Hard, Bloodsport, Heathers, Working Girl, Coming to America. These were fantastic movies.
Working Girl was fantastic.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die hard. We're gonna die, 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 die as hard as we can.
Welcome to Shat the Movies. My name is Roger Roper. This podcast is all about rewinding the 80s and sometimes 90s and going back and rewatching some of the movies that we watched as kids and just kind of talking about where we were in our lives and whether or not this movie holds up. So if you found this podcast via iTunes or SoundCloud, we're glad to have you. A little bit about myself. I grew up an only child. And instead of daycare, my parents would leave me on the steps of my grandparents, and my grandparents had HBO, and that was basically how I spent my summers, watching every terrible movie on HBO. And then I lived across the street from this guy who had probably every movie pirated off of Showtime, Cinemax, and HBO. He had one of those boxes. And so that's how I got my love for movies, and I consider myself a cinephile, so I'm really excited. But before we dive in, I want to introduce my co-host, Mr. Dick Ebert. Dick.
Well, how you doing there, Roger? Yep, Dick Ebert. Yeah, I grew up also a big movie fan, but I'm old enough to remember before VHS tapes when Flash Gordon would come on Saturday afternoon and you would just run home to try to catch it when there was no seeing it a second time. So once VHS tapes came out and the first local movie rental place opened up, I was excited. Been a fan since. Worked at Blockbuster for a bunch of years and had a huge VHS collection.
What was your number one pet peeve working at Blockbuster?
Well, you could say it's the rewinding was an issue. But I used to love because people would come in adamant that they had returned the tapes on time. And they would tell you, no, there's no way I have 4 days of late charges. And we would just love to go upstairs and pull the tape. Or the countless people who would return adult homemade movies in the Blockbuster box.
Wait a minute. I thought that was only a rumor.
100% true.
Wait a minute. People would literally return their homemade sex videos to Blockbuster.
Well, you would get birthday parties. You would get family celebrations, but you would get occasional homemade adult films.
What would you do with these things?
Usually you'd pull people into the office and share what you'd found, which I'm sure probably wasn't legal. But you would love to see the people's reaction when they came back into the store, when you would call them and tell them, hey, Bob, we need you to come in and swap out the tape. What do you mean? Well, there's a film of private nature in the box. And it was always the husband or the male participant who would come in and pick up the tape.
It was never the female.
Never, ever. No chance.
Did you ever make copies of these VHSs?
No, the manager wouldn't let that happen, but we did we did make sure that the content was not original.
Blockbuster, from what I remember, Blockbuster never had porn movies, right? Like they would cut out specific scenes from movies. Is that correct?
No, I don't think they ever cut out scenes, but they wouldn't carry anything that was NC-17 at that point or mature, but there was no adult section. It was a family-friendly video store.
So do you remember the days before Blockbuster? Like, do you remember going into your neighborhood video store and just how sketchy it was? I can still remember mine in Jacksonville, Florida. There was this one just super sketchy. It reminded me of the video store from the movie Clerks, where you go in, they have you would get a key, but they had the adult section behind the curtain, the beads. And I remember sneaking in there one time, and I was blown away how crazy it was back there.
Well, I remember it used to be terrible because there was only 1 or 2 copies of each movie.
Yeah.
And God forbid you lost them because they were about $200 a piece. This was before they were out for purchase when they made the movies just for rental price, and it was like $200. So God forbid you lost your copy of Time Cop or something of that nature.
So, and what this podcast is about is not necessarily these are not going to be terrible movies. In fact, this first episode is all about one of like the most treasured movies of all time. Our first movie that we've selected from our list of our top 40 was the movie Big. Big came out in 1988. 1988 was a fantastic year of movies. I remember going and seeing Big in the theaters with my parents. It was like the hit movie of the summer. And I remember as a kid just thinking like, oh my God, I can't wait to be an adult.
Well, how old were you at the time? Because in 88, I was right in Josh's age bracket. So I remember for me, it was perfect because Josh, I could see myself in him and the excitement of going out there and being an adult. What about you?
Yeah. So Josh was 13 in the movie. I was 9, but I was older for my age. Like I always like identified with like, you know, older people. So like for me, I was like, oh, I can't wait to be I can't wait to be an adult, because when I was like 9, I was basically, 12 or 13, or so I thought. Anyway, here are the list.
You enjoyed it.
Here are the list of movies that came out in 1988, Dick. Beetlejuice, Bloodsport, Coming to America, Rain Man, Willow, and of course our theme song, Die Hard. Like 1988 was a great year for movies, and Big was right up there with it.
I think a lot of people would put Big at the top of that list. I mean, isn't it one of the top 100 films by the the Film Academy that rates it? Yeah,
Big was the 4th highest grossing title in 1988. Rain Man, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was 2nd, Coming to America 3rd, Big was 4th, then Twins right behind. But I was a little concerned. I was like, how are we going to talk about this movie? This movie is great. It's perfect. It's everything like my childhood was. That was not the case once I went back and watched it. But before we talk about it, let's play the trailer.
For Josh Baskin, life was a little unfair.
Told you to take out the garbage. You're gonna miss the bus. I'm gonna tell you again, Josh. Joshua Baskin. Josh!
Until he made a little wish.
I wish I were big.
Sweetheart, it's 7:30. Are you up? Josh!
20th Century Fox presents Tom Hanks. Big.
I turned into a grown-up, Mom. I made this wish on a machine, and it turned me into a grown-up.
So now what?
You get a job.
Cannot get a job. I play with all this stuff, and then I tell them what I think.
And they pay you for that? Suckers!
Vice President? He's only been here a week. See that girl over there in the red? She'll wrap her legs around you so tight you'll be begging for mercy.
Well, I'll stay away from her then.
I loved your ideas on the squeezy doll line.
Thanks.
What were you like when you were younger?
Go well, I wasn't much different.
Eject your seat! Who are you? I'm his girlfriend. I want to spend the night with you.
Do you mean sleep over?
Yeah.
Okay. But I get to be on top.
What is so special about Baskin?
He's a grown-up.
How do I feel about what?
How do you feel about me?
You're only young once.
This is important!
I'm your best friend. What's more important than that, huh?
But for Josh,
I miss my family, Susan, and I want to go home.
Oh, my God, you're married.
it just might last a lifetime. You'll never forget Tom Hanks.
Beluga.
In Big.
This was also the era of movies where they told you the entire plot in 2 minutes during a trailer.
And it was all done by the same guy. One voiceover, and it could have been any movie. But
So-
I feel like the trailer doesn't do it justice. I think the movie darker than that lets on, and I think it's almost like that must have been left on the cutting room floor, because watching it back, this is not the feel-good family love fest that I remember.
I could not believe how dark this movie truly was. It was bonkers. So the movie opens on this, I guess they're in New York. They've got to be like right outside the city. Now, Dick, you're from New York. Was this what it was like growing up in the outer boroughs of New York?
Well, I was from a little bit north of the city, but watching this with my wife, that was one of the first things that kind of jumped out was all the kids outside playing, doing jump rope and stickball. And I do remember that, but it was more strange now. Like, did the kids still do that? That was what I was wondering. But to me, it looks like they were trying to be Brooklyn or trying to be maybe somewhere Long Island. This was pretty much my youth. A lot of stickball.
Yeah.
A lot of basketball, playing outside. I mean, I can remember, I was thinking about this when I was planning, what we were going to talk about was, I remember when I was about 10 years old, stringing up a rope between trees in my yard and actually doing an A-team zip line. We were reenacting missions and sliding and the rope breaking and my friend falling about 25 feet and knocking himself out. Today, there would have been lawsuits. My parents would have lost their house. It would have been bad. But at that time, it was just rub some dirt on it, and Billy went back home, and no worse for the wear. But that was one of the big things that kind of stuck me watching. It was like going back in time to that.
Like, it starts off, he's playing stickball. He's got his, best friend. Things are going well for him. He's on the baseball team. And then, his family takes him to the state fair. The thing about fairs are you I don't remember going to fairs much as a kid and like it being fun. I remember going to fairs and it being extremely dangerous because
it still is. I don't think they ever had a height requirement with the carnies. I think Billy, I think that Josh 100% gets on the ride, but
that's right.
He's turned down and that just starts him down a dark path.
It does. Not like everything is going right with this kid. This kid has everything he wants in his life, but a carny won't let him on a ride, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever because we all know carnies will let you ride no matter what, as long as you have a ticket.
I'm telling you, if somebody would have wanted a new life, it should have been Billy. We get an early insight into Billy's life where he's probably about 13 members of the family. Mom seems like she's been drinking. She's screaming at everybody for not helping. The father's just a broken, beaten man. Grandma's chain smoking at the dinner table. As Billy helps, put out the dinner, helps serve the family, and the mother is just bitching and bitching and bitching. If anybody should have wanted to just run away, it would have been Billy, not Josh.
It shows how selfish of a character Josh is. So I
think Billy would have wanted his family to die. I don't think he would have
right.
wanted to be big.
One of the things that Josh is like, oh God, I can't get over this. And this is the tension in the movie is that his family is moving in his new sister into his room.
Why does Josh have a bunk bed in his room when he doesn't have a brother?
Yeah.
Did his brother die? Is there some dark backstory? What's the point of having, no wonder he's pissed about his sister coming in. He's living on the top of a bunk bed. Is he keeping that in there?
Yeah, what is that about?
What's that about?
Did you ever have...
I need the backstory. I need to know.
I will say this. I had a bunk bed growing up just like that, but I also had no friends, nor did I have a brother that died. So it was a little weird, but I related to it. Like growing up, like looking back, I'm like, just everyone had bunk beds back then. No one has bunk beds anymore.
I don't think they even make them anymore.
No, so Josh is upset. He can't get on this ride. He's defeated. His girl's like, banging some dude who can drive. He's really upset about that. He goes off to the arcade section. I can remember looking for these machines everywhere. Did you ever see these Zoltar machines at any arcades growing up?
No, the only thing I remember are the ones that you could hold on, it would shock you.
Yes.
And you had to see how long you could hold it or
Right.
the strength of your hand, how you could squeeze it. But I don't think the Zoltars or the fortune tellers actually existed.
Yeah. So he puts in his quarter, he feeds it. And again, what would you wish for in a situation like this that Josh just went through? What would be your first thing that you would wish for?
Be honest with you, Josh would probably wish that the girl would fall in love with him. That's a more realistic wish.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, he says, I want to be big. Like, if I'm going to put in a quarter into a demon machine that's not even plugged in, it's made like that's like, ooh, he looks down and it's not plugged in. I would be more clear. And that's where this whole movie, I guess, like
it's very vague.
It's very vague. He just, I want to be big. Like, he doesn't specify, I want to be 3 inches taller. That's where
what if he wakes up? He could have woken up 400 pounds.
That's
or he
right.
could have woken up maybe 8 feet tall.
He's now Tom Hanks on the top of the bunk bed.
But I find myself asking, it's like the Hulk. Where did his clothes go?
So he goes to school to try and I guess he wants to see Billy, which again, 1980s, anyone can get on elementary school campuses. No questions asked.
An adult man in an oversized hoodie sweater with loose-fitting pants and no shoes. They could just walk around in elementary school. Well, no problem.
No problem. But we see, and again, this is my version of the movie, we see Billy just getting harassed by like the PE coach, like during a game of basketball. Where again,
do they still do shirts and skins?
That was my question. I was like, are these kids like, not only are they still playing shirts and skins, but then at the end of the basketball game that the coach is ridiculously bullying Billy about, he's like, all right, guys, hit the showers. And I think he slaps one of the kids on the back of the butt. It was very disturbing.
No, you missed it. It's even better. They're playing basketball, but somehow when Billy blows the layup, the entire crowd hits him with dodgeballs.
Yes, that's right. And
which makes no sense.
And the coach is encouraging this. This was the 80s. I want to see Big Two, Billy's story, because I feel like we need to explore what happened to Billy. Billy is like and very resourceful and level-headed for the amount of things that are happening to him. Some crazy dude in sweatpants that he's never seen before corners him in an equipment room, and he starts crying. He immediately thinks things are about to get touched.
Oh, he immediately. There's no like he's going to be assaulted. He's worried about an adult man trying to have sex with him.
Yeah.
I think that has to come from something at home. That fear was instant.
This is a children's family movie in the 80s.
Billy doesn't even ask a question. He just hears the song and he's good to go. I would need a little more faith before I followed this adult man out of the school.
That's right. Because and that's immediately what happens, right? Doesn't Billy just like leave school with Josh?
Billy has no adult supervision in his life.
None whatsoever.
There's at no point do we think Billy's going to turn out to anything other than a convicted felon. Josh thinks he's had some success. You know, he convinced Billy with his song. This will be fairly simple. I'm going to go home and convince my mom.
Right.
So he takes his bike back home. He walks in the house and mom just isn't hearing it. So Billy, I thought he was fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
He came back at her. He said, hey, here's my birthday. I got a D on my history test. He said, my favorite baseball team is the Dukes. He said, look at the scar on the back of my thigh. He drops his pants and mom's just not hearing it.
So Josh, like, I guess hides with Billy. There's he hides in like a sewer, like
a culvert.
Yeah, he's in a pipe. But his plan is, well, let's just go to the city and you can get a job, and let's try and figure out where this carnival comes from. But like,
it might have been easier to say, hey, you know what, Josh, I'm going to go home and talk to your mother.
That's right.
And tell her what happened to you.
That's right.
That might be easy, but no, I think let's go the long route. Let's go to the city.
Yeah.
But here's my problem. You have now had an abduction of a little boy in this town. The police might be on a lookout for other children at danger. You might spot this little ginger walking into the sewage pipe with an adult man who looks very much like the description of the kidnapper.
That's right.
Is no one in this town watching? What's going on?
And this is the 1980s. Like, you grew up outside of New York City. Billy's immediate plan is, let's go into Times Square.
Hell no, not smart.
Unsupervised. So they hop on a city bus into New York.
Hold on. How does not his parents know his best friend has just been kidnapped? The police are obviously there investigating, interviewing everyone. they go to Josh's house and say, hey, where's where's his best friend? Oh, he lives next door. Go to the parents. Where's Billy? Oh, we don't know.
That's
you don't
right.
think they'd be looking at him as another victim of the kidnapper?
This was 1980s parenting. No one gave a shit.
They pass a homeless guy, and the homeless guy is just muttering, kill the bitch, kill the bitch, kill the bitch with a knife, kill the bitch, kill the bitch, kill the bitch. And this is where closed caption comes in handy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no fear. You wouldn't worry about that if you were Billy.
Yeah, I think Billy's like, you might want to put the chain on the door. But
hey, hold on. What motel allows you to check in an adult man with a ginger child? There's no red flags going off. I think I'd be a little concerned. I would say, is this your child? You can see that Tom Hanks is looking shady. You'd wonder what's going on. I don't care if this is a $17 hotel or motel room. I want to know what you're doing in the room with that little boy.
No questions were asked whatsoever.
Terrible. So then Billy leaves, right? So, Josh is all alone now. And outside he hears gunfire. He hears somebody screaming about the money. And you see he looks a little concerned, closes the window. But what does truly freak out poor Josh? When you get a man screaming Spanish on the payphone.
That's right.
That just set him off, set him into a complete catatonic state. He started crying. He sat on the floor. God forbid Josh is around somebody speaking Spanish.
That's what scared people in the 80s. If you were white, were crazy Spanish people. So your wife she's bilingual. She understands. What was that guy saying in Spanish? Did you get the lowdown on that?
Yeah, yes. The guy was screaming at his girlfriend saying, you can't decide who you marry. You can't be with him. It was a guy arguing with his girlfriend about not breaking up with him, which sounds to me a little less frightening than give me the money and gunshots.
That's right. That's exactly right. I feel really bad for that guy because that guy is like, I want to know that guy's backstory. What happened in his life?
Well, you notice that he's not on camera. Because I don't think there were any minorities on screen at any point in this entire movie.
That's exactly right. I counted like 2, and I think it's only because I was watching the extended version.
You could get away with that in the 80s.
That's right. And so the next day, this was, I guess, life in the 80s is you had to go to government offices to find where stuff was. He goes to the licensing bureau. Who would know to go to the licensing bureau? Like, I don't remember any of this.
I remember being very young, and Cindy Crawford had done the Playboy issue, but she had done it a few years before we could actually get our hands on them. So 2 friends and myself, we went into Manhattan, into the New York Library, and pulled up the microfiche for that issue and printed out the sheets. So yes, back in the day, that was what you had to do when you wanted to get some information or some requests done.
So he was like, well, I find a job with computers. I like computers.
He shows up with a kid.
That's right.
Again in the lobby.
Who shows up with a 13-year-old boy?
He says, did you pledge? Oh, every day. Every day.
That's right. That's right. So he starts, I guess, that day? Is that the thing? Like, does he start that day?
He said he could start soon.
I completely forgot John Lovitz was in this movie, which was the guy playing the creepy coworker next to Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks has been there. He sits down. He's there for 30 seconds before John Lovitz turns to him and he's like, see the girl in the red dress? If you say hello to her, she'll do you or something like that. How did it go?
If you even say hi to her, she'll wrap her legs around you and just squeeze you. And he said, I'll make sure I stay away from her.
Sexual harassment, people smoking. This is what I thought the workplace would be like when I was adult.
But during his orientation, they tell him, do you smoke? And he said, no. And they said, well, you can smoke in these areas. Who the hell's enforcing those rules? People are smoking everywhere. Susan's smoking in a damn room full of kids. They're smoking in meetings.
That's right.
I felt like it was Mad Men. Susan's work attire? What was she wearing? It looked like Tina Turner in Beyond Thunderdome. She's wearing the shoulder pads with the double-breasted top, and it just looked strange. I don't know what was going on back then.
He picks up the phone and calls his mother this distraught woman.
Where Josh Baskin, the adult, is working, and Josh Baskin, the child, is missing, and then starts to torment his poor mother. The mother is obviously upset. I don't know why there's no police there recording or tracing the call. It's twisted. And what does he do? He starts singing, memories like the corners of my mind. And the poor mother looks like she's going to kill herself. And he goes on to say, oh, it's not that bad. They let me out sometimes. It's kind of like camp.
Yeah, it is creepy.
This is a missing white child.
That's right. In New York.
Seriously, think about like JonBenet Ramsey, or think of some of these big cases. How is no one investigating this child missing?
But yeah, no, there is zero search going on. The only thing that made it seem as if there was an active police search going on was Paul and Susan. There's a scene of them having breakfast. Paul is looking at the news and upset that businessmen are getting arrested, and they're drinking out of the milk carton, and there's a picture of Josh. That's the only thing. That's the only reference after the initial interview with the police that there's any kind of detective work going on whatsoever in this movie.
I don't think it would have been a hard case to solve, because the missing child, Josh Baskin, is hiding as an adult Josh Baskin, that you would think if a child went missing and they put it on the news, any of Josh's coworkers would kind of question,
That's right.
That name sounds familiar. Yeah, the guy who's walking around with children in a motel.
The one who has an incomplete social security number
without a driver's license.
That's right.
Isn't that him?
He has zero identification, gets a job. Not only does he get a job, but like he runs into the CEO of the company along with Susan and Paul in like the worst meet cute ever. This is like the 80s meet cute. You would just literally run into people.
But what about the slow, creepy stare that Josh does down Susan's blouse as he's picking up the Xerox copies? They went nice and slow to make us see that Josh was perving her out. So Josh, who is now staying in a motel with a child, doesn't have any ID, decides to go to FAO Schwartz, the largest toy store in New York City, and do what? But walk around and talk to children who are without their parents. Plays a little laser tag, he starts talking to them. I really think this would have rose some red flags.
Yeah, there is no one concerned. He immediately, like, I guess I felt bad. The person that I felt bad for the most in the toy store is the guy that is dressed as a pilot, and he's throwing like the airplane around a set of kids. We didn't grow up with FAO Schwartz's. Was that legit attire for people who worked at FAO Schwartz?
I just remember FAO Schwartz sold like the most. They sold high-end stuff. So it wasn't like it was a stock like KB Toys. They would have like a miniature Lamborghini gas-powered goat cart, or they would have a life-size lion stuffed animal. But then they would also have some board games and some high-end Lego sets. But yes, it was usually like a boutique, smaller displays, and it was real sparse. But I remember it being packed, and I remembered security being all over the place because it was in Manhattan, and I'm sure that they had a shoplifting problem. But I don't really think that a man could walk around and wrestle with kids on the floor and just...
Apparently this is okay because MacMillen, the CEO, is just walking around there creepily as well. And he says, I do this every Saturday. I just come here. Like, what is going on with MacMillen? Does he also see like Josh is like, maybe Josh is also a creeper like I am?
He wants to know how his parole officer doesn't, how do you avoid your parole officer, Josh? I don't know, Mr. MacMillen.
This is when I knew I wasn't rich, because I had none of those toys at FAO Schwartz. Why would you have a giant life-size piano that you would just walk on? Like, it made no sense whatsoever.
Well, I was actually there when they had the piano in after the movie, and there was a line of about 30 people long to get onto the keyboard.
So they do the chopsticks, and then all of a sudden, like, again, 1 week later, the guy is promoted.
Yeah, so Susan and Paul the next day are talking. Where did this guy come from? Did he come from Hasbro? Did he come from ColecoVision? Did he come from Mattel? And they're like, no, he hasn't come from anywhere. How about you take his resume and check his resume. Why are you going out there blindly looking for him? Of course he came from nowhere. And you wouldn't raise a question then? How did this VP missing a social security number and no verifiable job history or educational background is now promoted to VP?
Yeah.
But I'd like to talk here about what a dick Josh is. He's ordering that poor secretary around, making her get the 86 Super Bowl with the Broncos and Giants and edit out the commercials. Can she even do that?
That was my question. How is that a thing?
How do you justify the time it's going to take in 88? You know it would have taken 3 guys probably 2 days to edit out the commercials on an old reel-to-reel. There's no way.
That's right.
And the secretary doesn't say, I'm not sure why I'm bringing in all sugary treats in the morning and editing Super Bowl footage, or the fact that young ginger boy is still alone in his office with him throughout the day. But I just think that Susan is a great role model for the young female professional.
Yes.
You know, you can go to work, and if you're a young child, a white male, you'll become VP. If you're a woman, you need to get your way up the corporate ladder on your back. And it seems like that's what Susan's doing. Every guy in the office who can advance her career, she's clearly trying to sleep with. And I think we see that next when they go to the corporate dinner party.
Yeah, the corporate dinner party made no sense to me. It not just a party, but like a ridiculously fancy party where they bring the corporate limos.
Oh, it couldn't have been Christmas because just you could tell the weather.
Right.
But I just didn't understand what it was, but I just found it funny when Josh shows up in his white tux.
That's right.
And everyone's looking at him and laughing at him. If you watch it, you can see him look down to see if his fly's opened, and he gently caresses his package to check if his fly is open. And I would think, again, everyone now is staring at him. They might, it's another checkbox. Okay, let's start to question Josh.
No, I took it as, well, he's like the quirky product development guy. Of course, he can get away with wearing some of this and being just kind of kooky. And I assume that was their motivation in the movie.
But Josh then sees the woman he had been warned about that will wrap her legs around him.
Yeah.
And she comes over to Josh and sees what he's doing. And Josh runs away to the buffet.
Yeah. So again, all right, think back. You are 13 years old at this time in your life. Like, you were watching this movie. You are senior vice president within a week. Things are going really well for you. You knew what sex was at 13, correct?
Yes, of course.
How do you not pick up that she wants to go home with you?
Josh has to know. He could pick up that other chick wanted him, the one who's at the fair. So he knows.
He's looking down girls' dresses.
Yeah, so I don't get why he's playing so coy.
So he starts eating the buffet. And as he's like eating the buffet, Susan is still turned on from his presentation and looks over. And these are the scenes that, like, I remember. He's eating a baby corn. How is that sexy to Susan? How is
No, what about him licking out the cheese from a celery and then putting the celery back in? Or when he's double and triple dipping the baby carrots?
I can definitely see how licking out the cheese from a celery would turn me on as a woman. It turns me on as a guy.
I don't know what she's thinking. And to me, it seemed unbelievable that Susan would feel that, especially when he spits out the caviar right onto the floor in front of her.
She's like, let's get out of here right now.
She's already ready to throw away her current boyfriend when she sees this young corporate stud. Bad move.
So they leave to go from the party, I guess, to his house, which he's rented this amazing apartment.
Well, it sounds like she just wants to go for a ride.
Oh, is that it? Is he just want to go for a ride?
Go for a ride, but they happen to pass by his apartment.
Yeah.
Which, again, to me, raises flags. How the hell is he renting an apartment in Manhattan, the entire floor of a building with no credit history, missing digit on the social security number again, and no problem? How is this happening? What world is this happening in?
This is white America in the 80s in New York. You can get away with anything.
Well, you realize that his apartment is the New York version of Neverland Ranch.
That's right. And he keeps inviting young boys over. It's bonkers.
He just needs some Jesus juice and some llamas.
That's right. So he invites Susan up to the room. She gladly comes over. She's like, are you going to invite me in? He's like, what, for a sleepover? Like, again, this is a grown woman. How much does she want to succeed at business to where she's willing to sleep with him? Like, I kept thinking the entire time, is he autistic? Like, what would I be?
Exactly. She's willing to sleep with an autistic man if it will benefit her career. He then tells her, he says, Susan, that's fine. Well, I get to be on top.
Susan is a sexual predator.
That's without a doubt.
Yeah.
That is one of my biggest problems looking back at this. Susan should go to jail, and most likely she would go to jail. But she did look good rocking the Mark Gastineau Jets jersey.
The other thing that I didn't get is how did they get a trampoline into that place?
Yeah, right next to large, like 4-foot glass pane windows.
That's right.
That's a smart move. A trampoline's a death machine in someone's backyard. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Let's make it more dangerous.
Yeah.
Let's put it in the middle of an apartment on the 7th floor near the windows. But at this point, she's been with Josh now about 15 minutes, and we're already seeing it change her character. No longer does she want to listen to the business report. She immediately changes the radio station to listen to some music because, just 5 minutes with Josh, and it's changing who she is.
That's right. So they go on their first official date. They go to a carnival again. The Zoltar machine is there. It's there. The crazy thing, did you hear the growl? Do you remember the growl? The Zoltar machine.
Yes.
Growls as he passes by. Like,
yes. Well, a funny thing with that is that amusement park is actually right where I grew up. That's Rye Playland. And the roller coaster they're on is the Dragon Coaster, and then they go on the yo-yo. Both favorite rides from growing up. So it was
right.
Cool to see. No, and I remember my sister at the time actually happened to be there when they were filming.
Really?
And the crowd wasn't quite too sure who Tom Hanks was because the stars weren't out there, but the cameras were, and you could see them filming. And my sister said there was a group of people yelling, yo, Tom, we loved you in Top Gun. And the producers looked over and said, wrong Tom, wrong movie. But yeah, Rye Playland, looking back on it now, it's kind of a sad, beat up amusement park. But at the time, it was the best thing you could dream of not living in Florida. That's amusement park.
But that's apparently all there was to do in New York in the 1980s is not get killed in Times Square and go to like shitty carnivals.
No, well, if you went to Six Flags, Great Adventure in New Jersey, that was that or what was it called now? Damn it. You're going to have to, what the fuck was it called? It was upstate New York. It was like Wet and Wild. It was a water park and it was a death trap.
That's the place where all the people kept dying.
It was Vernon Valley, Great Gorge, but it was Great Adventure maybe?
No, it wasn't Great Adventure, but yeah, I knew which one it was. So that's where they kiss for the first time. And I remember watching this as a kid. This was where I got boners because they start making out. They go back to her place.
He starts cupping her breast and she tries to turn the lights off. And he says, no, I like to watch.
That's right.
He is giving every signal to run, but nope, she just sticks with it. And what kills me is, the next day walking into work, Josh is a different man. Next day, he is wearing a properly fitting adult suit. He walks in, tells his secretary, I want coffee. And she says, you don't drink coffee. He tells her to clear his schedule. He gets laid once and he is instantly an adult.
This is what I thought having sex did. It immediately would change you. And like all of a sudden you would have a closet full of well-fitting, tailored suits. You wouldn't wear tennis shoes anymore, and it was all because you got some action.
He went from shooting crazy string at his buddy after eating $180 worth of pizza to now he's going to dinner parties and talking about Columbus and his ships and teaching algebra to a coworker's son.
Can we talk about the
sex is wonderful, but the vagina is not magic. It doesn't turn him into an adult like that.
Let's talk about that dinner scene. So they're Is it a coworker's place where
It's
they're
a
at?
a coworker's dinner. Yeah.
Yeah. So the guy hosting the party, his son walks in, roughly the same age as Josh was when he was a teenager, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, like, can you help me with my homework?" And the guy like is an abusive father to his son in front of his entire dinner guests. No one says a word.
Dad, you promised you'd help. You promised you'd help. You get out of here.
And
Yep, Josh sees an opportunity. Another child alone in his room with adult parents who don't care about him. Bing, 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 bing. Josh is off.
no one says a word. It's to the point to where the mother of the kid and Susan are at the doorway saying, "I told you he was good with kids."
What if Josh said to the mother, "I only tutor with the door closed. Can we just close the door? I need to really do this in private." Would she let him do it? I want to leave the adult party and just go play in this boy's room again. We could beat this to death.
Isn't there a scene also where Billy again shows up at his office and they're outside the building and Billy's like, "Let's go get some beer and nudie mags."
Yes, no, he says, "Come on, man, let's go get some beers and dirty magazines," with a group of people around them. What is Billy and Josh doing? Obviously, they've done it before because Billy's saying it like, "Let's do it again." What are they doing? Are they sitting around together drinking? And it's too dark. But wait, no. So now they're pitching their big idea. This is going to set their career in motion.
That's right.
And Josh just has an epiphany. He decides to just run out of the room. Susan, again, who spent her whole life on her back in corporate America to climb up the ladder, she's finally on the edge of having this big product line. She's going to become more successful on her own merits. And what does she do? She just runs out of the meeting.
That's right. But
to go chase Josh.
But why does Josh do that? It's because he creepily goes back to his hometown and starts visiting all those places that he, like, I guess is left behind. Like he sees the girl from the carnival in the back seat of the Volkswagen. He sees like people playing baseball. Like,
well, you have to understand, Josh is wearing, his disguise, which is a large trench coat, and no one would ever suspect another adult man walking around the same town who meets the description of Josh's kidnapper, going and watching kids alone in a field play baseball, stickball. He's watching kids on a swing, kids. The police would be there in about 4 seconds. And where the hell are the missing Billy posters from the neighborhood? Wouldn't there be Billy posters on the street, in the windows of the businesses, on the trees? Billy's forgotten. Oh, Josh is forgotten.
Josh is forgotten.
Shit, I even forgot him. You know what I'm saying?
But why do you go back? So he has this epiphany of, I've got to go back to that. Why? Why do you go back? You are making great money. You've got a great apartment in New York. You're banging some broad who wants to be your girlfriend.
His life can only go down from there. He's more successful than his parents are. He's already seen he can succeed in the business world. He has just jumped ahead. Why would he want to go back? There's nothing for him.
It makes zero sense whatsoever.
Yep. So he goes back to the Zoltar machine. He's finally decided.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Before any of this. So they also have that conversation of where he's like, "I'm a kid. I don't know if I can be with you anymore. I'm a 13-year-old boy." Like he explains the exact same thing. The exact same thing, right? Like they're supposed to give the presentation the next day and he comes out, he comes clean to her. He says, "I'm a 13-year-old boy. My name is Josh Baskin."
Yeah.
And I like baseball and bubblegum. And she's like,
"I can't do this."
You know what she says? She says, "We all have an inner child trying to get out. You don't think I do as well?" Like that's really? She is not worried about this whatsoever.
Well, her one fear is she keeps saying, "I knew you had a family. I knew you had a family." So obviously she's been the other woman before, and has had the guy leave her when he reveals that he has a secret family.
Yeah. I really feel bad for Susan. Susan is like,
she's damaged. Susan also tells him, she says, "No matter what, I'm here for you. No matter what, you can tell me." He tells her his secret and she immediately leaves him.
But she discovers that everything is true by looking through his wallet, which again,
that's the extended cut.
Oh, really?
Yes, there is no, that scene's not in it.
So in the extended cut, she pulls out his wallet from his pants as she's picking up after him, and pulls out a Don Mattingly baseball card that's been glued together with baseball gum, and then the Zoltaire card that says your wish is granted.
I still think the biggest dick in this entire movie is without a doubt Billy. There's a scene in there that you missed where Billy's laying in bed and he hears the walkie-talkie crackle. So he then sees that Josh's mother is on her bed in his room right next door. So they open up the window and have a conversation. Billy can see that Josh's mother is distraught. She has lost her child. She thinks he's dead. Her life is over. She's in her missing son's room. Whereas he could say, don't worry, Billy has called me and he's really safe and he's doing well.
He could literally tell her the truth at that moment.
Yes.
He could literally say,
guess what? I can take you to Billy right now. He is living. He's safe. That guy who came in your house in his underwear, that was really him. Let's go to him right now.
So Josh hops a taxi, goes back to the carnival, finds the growling Zoltaire machine, makes the wish, and then right at that moment, Susan comes up.
So at this point, though, I think she's starting to feel guilty when she realizes that she's been having sex with a child.
Right.
She asks again how old he is. She goes 15, 16. He goes, no, 13. And she just looks down and goes, figures.
That's right.
So I don't know. Does she mean it figures that she would find some child that loved her? Or was she talking about Josh's performance in bed?
She's like, keep my number. You might need it in a couple years.
Seriously. That's a joke. Like 23-year-old Josh is going to want a 44-year-old Susan. That's not happening.
What I don't get is in the first time he wishes to be big, it takes him an entire all day. There's a crazy storm. I assume it would have had to do something with the dark arts of Zoltar. It does not. It literally changes him in 20 minutes back to being young.
Well, my problem also is how the hell was Josh affording that luxury, that apartment and that shit box that Susan is driving, that 1984 Subaru with the automatic seatbelt?
The automatic seatbelt.
Yeah, that was a shit box. What the hell? She's a VP too.
Well,
why is she driving that garbage box?
You know that women get paid 21% less than men.
So now he immediately turns back into young Josh. They look at each other. They walk off, and that's the end of the movie.
Did you feel like she gave him kind of a creepy stare as he was walking back into the house?
Well, I was just glad that she didn't give him a kiss after she knew he was 13.
Right.
She just gave him a kiss on the forehead, which was her last redeeming act. But yes, her gaze was a bit too much.
Well, the movie just ends by him walking into the house and saying, "Hey, Mom, I'm back. It's me. Josh, I'm good. I'm fine." And then that's it. There's no epilogue. There's no anything.
Well, there's no missing Josh poster on the front lawn. There's no ribbons around the trees in the neighborhood. Nothing. Josh is just gone. But have you read or heard about the legend of the alternate ending for Big?
No.
So there is a legend supposedly in, I think it was a version in South America and also in somewhere in Europe, that there is an alternate midway through the credit ending where it flash forwards to a school scene where Josh is back in school. And the teacher says, "Let's all welcome a new student, Susan." And they turn around and it's a young girl who we're led to believe is Susan joins the class. So now it's become urban legend. No one can prove it exists. You have people who swear they've seen it, but I did some research on it and I could not find any verifiable. Penny Marshall's been interviewed and she hasn't given a clear answer on it, but so there is some mythology that there was another ending, but it didn't do well in testing.
Really? So do you think the story is that Elizabeth Perkins' character Susan goes to back to the Zoltaire machine, and says, I want to be 13, and then like is like 100% just stalking this kid.
Where's she going to live?
That's right.
She's got no place to live. She has no job. She has no parents. She'll probably end up in foster care.
My question is, what other things has this Zoltar machine given wishes for?
Because that wasn't the first. Yeah, what happens if somebody bad gets a hold of the Zoltar machine?
And I didn't really understand how also, because typically these movies, and I guess it's like an ancient tale, like you make a deal with the devil or something like that, and then your wish is granted, but there's always some sort of twist to it. There were zero twists to this movie. He just keeps succeeding and succeeding and succeeding. And then he goes back to being a kid because he just missed his family. Like that's the only possible explanation for it, right?
No, the twisted end is going to be that Josh will lead an unfulfilling life. He's already reached the heights of success in the business world, in his personal life. He now has to replicate that, which he's not going to be able to do without his childhood. Like, his innocence is what got him ahead. He has nowhere to go but down. He now has to spend the years listening to his unsuccessful parents give him advice and set up rules for him to follow when he knows they're less successful than he is. So he's going to have to go through all the motion, go to school, and he will never reach the pinnacle he did as a 13-year-old boy.
How soon do you think that he starts looking for that Zoltar machine again?
He's probably coming back the next week.
That's right. We've already understood that Josh is the most selfish individual out there, right? Like, he's going to want to go back and like, he's like, screw this. I want to go back to my own life.
Josh is concerned that he knows this machine gives wishes. Wouldn't he worry about somebody going out there and saying, I wish that the whole Middle East would disappear, or I wish that everyone in my town was dead, or I wish I had $5 billion.
I thought that I remembered the Zoltar machine like getting broken or something like that after. It does not. So the Zoltar machine,
Josh leaves it out there. Doesn't care
about the repercussions whatsoever.
Josh is the kid who finds a loaded gun in the park and just leaves it there.
That's right.
He could take it to the police, but no, he's gonna actually go put it over near the kids' playground by the swings.
I like to think that Billy went over to the Zoltar machine and made a wish for his family to like just disappear.
But here's my problem. Susan is going to jail. Not even a question. Because now we have old Josh has now returned to the kid. But now adult Josh is missing. Okay? So adult Josh has a lease, he has property, he has a job. He's going to stop showing up, and the police are going to come investigate. And maybe at this point they're going to put together, wow, we've had 2 Josh Baskins disappear. What happened? Who are they going to go interview? They're going to interview Susan, right?
Yeah.
Now, Susan's ex-boyfriend has already assaulted adult Josh. You don't think any of these people are going to become suspects? And they're not going to buy it when Susan tells the police, oh, he was a boy, but he looked older. She's going to jail.
At the end of the day, I still find this movie pretty charming. Like, for as dark as it is, looking back and watching this movie, it's still like, I enjoy Tom Hanks' performance. I thought Elizabeth Perkins was great.
I would not watch this movie again. I enjoyed it at the time, but now going back, too many problems. And Tom Hanks surprised me. I thought he was terrible. Every time Tom Hanks, he was a one note. Every time he wanted to show that he was a child as an adult, he would just shrug his shoulders. He's in a meeting and he doesn't know what a marketing report is. He shrugs his shoulders. Susan says, "Do you want to go sleep with me?" He shrugs his shoulders. It was bad.
But
what I want to see, I want the follow-up to be Billy, and this just hit me. Billy is a troubled kid, right? Who's living in an unhappy home. When the police are first at Josh's house, somebody in the neighborhood says, "Oh, I think he ran away." One of Billy's brothers says, "I wish I could run away." You can only tell it when you have the subtitles on. Billy wants out. Billy knows the Zoltar machine exists. How does he not go make his own wish?
That's right.
What friend would not go? I want the follow-up movie to be Billy finds the Zoltar machine and uses it for evil.
Big 2, Billy's Revenge.
I want Billy to take revenge on all those that have hurt him.
That's right.
It could be something like the butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher, where it becomes this twisted, kind of a tormented story of his youth, and he's trying to fix it, but keeps making it worse. So, no, I will not be watching Big again, and I will not be recommending it.
How can you find us, Dick?
Well, we are on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we are on YouTube. Please, the best thing you can do, we are at shatthemovies.com. Please give us the reviews on iTunes. It's the best thing you can do to help us along. 5-star reviews, please. But you can follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We have a list on the website at shatthemovies.com that will tell you all the movies that are coming down the pike. Hopefully we'll be doing one a week. If you want to give us feedback, please join in the process. If you disagree with our take on it or your memories of the movie, if you have something you want to share, we would greatly appreciate it. But until then, make sure you leave an empty seat between you and your buddy, or everyone's going to think you're together.
Yes, you can email your suggestions to hosts@shatthemovies.com or leave us a Facebook or Twitter message. And if you have a movie that's not on the list but you want us to do it, let us know. And again, thank you so much for listening. It was our first episode. Hopefully they'll get better.
Yes, hopefully we'll get better. Yes.
Thank you so much for listening.
We're gonna die.